Hi, I'm Dr. Rick Duplantis, and you're watching It's Your Health. My guest tonight is Dee Stanley, a candidate for the parish president position here in Lafayette. Dee, I want to welcome you to my show. Thank you for taking time off from your busy schedule to appear on the show.
Hey, Doc, good to be with you, and I hope I can get some health tips while we're doing this.
Sure. I want to go over your CV here. It's very interesting. You have a Bachelor's of Arts from Louisiana State University in journalism back in 1981, and that's about the same time you joined KLFY Channel 10 as a reporter at that time. You've been with them for about 20 years. You had 20 years of broadcast experience. Yep. And of special note, as an investigative reporter for 10 years.
Yes.
And how you came to be city chief administrative officer is kind of interesting. You're 55 years of age.
Yes, I am.
You're Republican.
Yes.
And you're married to Blue Rolfers.
That's probably the best credential of all of those three, I think.
Now I read that note, that excerpt that Edwin Edwards sent you after you got married.
Oh yeah. He had fun with my engagement to Blue. We had known the former governor for all of my adult life, certainly, and when he found out Blue and I were engaged, she actually was interviewing him at that point, and he saw the engagement ring, and he penned me a little note that's colorful, I think, even for Access Television.
Yeah, correct. I saw that. That was noted. I wanted to talk about, people, when you came as a chief administrative officer, I think a lot of people maybe question that, your credentials to do such an office. George Durrell evidently had great confidence in you, with no regard to your political affiliation, no regard to who you supported in that particular election. He chose you for that top job, and but very few people knew that you had this extensive education, knowledge, self-taught, and a quick study that you are by your career in investigative reporting, so you knew the ins and outs of the government. You were a city clerk under Kenny Bowen for 2 years.
And Douglas Strapp for 2 years.
Yes. And so that gave you some insight to city government as well, and gave you that knowledge that you bring to the table. And it was kind of a funny way that came about, that Joey Durrell called you he wanted to talk to you, and you met at a la carte, of course.
We did, had breakfast. He was about 3 weeks away from an inauguration. He hadn't hired the chief administrative officer yet. I was about to sign another contract with KLFY for another 5 years to begin in January, and Joey called, actually, my bosses at the time. He called Maria Placer and called our general manager, Mike Barra, and asked for permission to have breakfast with me the next morning to talk about the future. And so it started to look like a job interview. I thought it was a breakfast, and we were talking about a transition. And I remember asking him that morning as we were leaving, I said, "Mayor, are you offering me a job?" And he said, "Not yet." And so that's the way Joey operates, very deliberative and has things in his own mind, plays things close to the vest sometime when it's important to do so. And I got the call a little bit later in the week that he felt like, in Joey's words, he wanted to see how I squeeze the tube of toothpaste. Did I grab it, or did I roll it up from the bottom? That was his metaphor. And so it came to pass in January of 2004, and it's been an amazing 12-year ride, I tell you.
Tremendous. Some people that were in support of you was Louis Perret because of your background as a city clerk and as an investigative reporter, but you had the naysayers as well. And what I found remarkable is these people came back and said, I didn't think that you were the man for this job, but you proved me wrong.
Bruce Conk would be one of those. Bruce and I go way back. We go back more than 30 years. Bruce was production manager at KLFY. I was news director, of course, at KLFY for a long time. I had known Bruce when I was a student at LSU, and he had worked as the Acadiana bureau chief and worked for WBRZ in Baton Rouge, because Bruce is much older than I am. Just kidding, Bruce. And we had a good friendship, but Bruce was just coming on to the council in 2004. Joey was just coming on in 2004. And Bruce really had some doubts, which I have to tell you, he's the kind of person where he amplified those directly to me and Joey. And he was very brutally honest with Joey. He said, "I think it's a mistake. I don't know that he's the right guy." Bruce would come to eat those words a little bit later in a very friendly way. He and I have been good friends for a long time since then. But, you know, the way to, I guess, prove something to the naysayers or convince anyone of anything is to do your job and do the right thing. And I've been blessed to be part of a team, I think, for the past 12 years. It's not arguable that Lafayette and Lafayette Parish is in a lot better position than we were fiscally at that time. And we have seen incredible growth and faced life-changing challenges with Hurricane Katrina going this way and Hurricane Rita going this way, and Lafayette basically being right in the middle, our parish, and seeing an abnormal amount of growth over a compressed period of time. And we still have some challenges. Traffic and infrastructure, of course, being one of them. Healthcare and this changing face of healthcare being another. But I've been involved, as I said, I've been blessed to be part of an amazing team, and I'm hopeful that the voters will keep me for at least another 4, to get some unfinished business taken care of.
Right. You're a big supporter of LSU and UL.
Of course, I love my Raging Cajuns. My daughter just graduated with her master's degree about 3 weeks ago from UL. I do not have a master's degree. I was an undergraduate at LSU, but moved here in '81. Maria Placer offered me a job in '81. I fell in love with Lafayette. I fell in love with blue. And for the past 35 years, we've raised our family here, and Lafayette is home, certainly.
It's been said that you don't have any skeletons in your closet.
I don't know about that.
Angela Seminoff said that with an advocate reporter.
Yeah.
Your hobbies are cooking. You enjoy cooking.
I like fishing a little bit.
Fishing?
Deep sea
Okay.
fishing too.
I understand. Okay, we're good. As the chief administrative officer, you supervised and involved departmental directors. It was to make sure the administrative position was being followed. Problem solver for various problems. You work closely with the city parish president, of course. Ensure policy. With the council members as well. Active in the community with various business leaders to ensure needs being met. And you work closely with the finance and manager to make sure that the budget is kept as a whole. Give me some of the points of chief administrative officer that you feel give you an edge on this position.
Well, I think the most important thing is working with people and building relationships. As a former city clerk, a mayor's platform that he sends down or a budget to a council only works if you have a majority of the council that's willing to embrace that and work together in that regard. So I have that experience of working under 2 very different and divergent mayors and mayoral philosophies while being the director of the city council office back in the early to mid 1990s. And now over the last 12 years, having worked with 3 different councils, including a complete turnover of the first council. So in 2004, when we took office, we were the new guys, so to speak. And now, when the turnover of the council happened, the council members were the new guys. So the ability to be able to work with them and to understand their views and to be able to work together toward progress and a budget that makes sense is significant. Unlike the state, we have not kicked a can down the road for the past 12 years. We haven't balanced our budget using mythical numbers as the state has with the price of oil. They're going to have to make, it appears to be, if what our state treasurer believes will happen and the revenue estimating conference, they're going to have to make some mid-year budget cuts and mid-year adjustments. So back in '09, when it was really tough and oil was last in the $40 range, we used our rainy day fund because it was raining. But as the economy improved, we started to build back that fund to wait on the next thunderstorm and to make sure that we were fiscally healthy. So we didn't live off of one-time money for the past 5 years. So proud to say that our team has put together, has built back our rainy day fund, has balanced our budget, made tough decisions, cut employee positions, did not provide pay raises when we were not in a position to be able to afford those things. And in my boss's words, make decisions like business people rather than politicians. And I think that's served this administration well over the past 12 years. We have about 30% or more of our operating fund in reserve, and it's a good thing we do. I don't know that it's raining again, Doc, but it's drizzling. And how long, whether it turns into a toad strangler, as my friend Dick Farrow used to say, we'll see.
Yeah.
But I think we're better equipped than we've ever been in the history of this government. I know we are, to be able to deal with what's to come. And I think that experience and the ability of being a mechanic of sorts and involved with the whole operation of the vehicle, the engine, the transmission, all of those things that keep this thing moving. I think I'm blessed to have been able to do so, but I'm proud to be able to use that experience where I can.
Correct. I've got a question about the economy, and you kind of brought up some of that about Lafayette. What do you foresee for us in the economy here over the next 4, say 8 years? We know all of this, the price of oil per barrel is really declining, and is at a low at this point in time. How do you see for us the diversification of the economy in Lafayette weathering this?
Well, I mean, I think that's a great question. And while we're certainly a lot more diversified than we were in the 1980s, we are still very much an oil and gas-based economy. We have diversified into technology, and we can talk about fiber optics if you want. That's probably a half-hour show in and of itself telling that story. But we are hearing from the companies, if you think just of the 3 companies that have come in with CGI and Caro and Proficient, you're looking at about 1,000 jobs in the $55,000 range. There's a $13 million building under construction on the UL campus with CGI. There is a temporary office for Proficient that is under development now downtown. And the importance of that is you're looking at potentially $60 million in payroll related to software and software engineering and technology, with fiber and our university at the focal point of that. Those jobs don't exist in the Lafayette market today. And they're not 100% dependent on the price of oil or the price of gas or the ability. Right. So that diversity is important when you consider that at a time when we need it most, that you have those companies that are willing to invest in our community. The other aspect is we have become, and I don't have to tell you, you're in the business, but a burgeoning medical hub. And
correct. You know, I read back, I guess 1995, that Lafayette was positioned to become another medical hub in the state of Louisiana, and it has become that since that point in time.
I was going to ask you that question. Do you believe that we're there?
Yeah, I think we are. And right in line with Shreveport, New Orleans, of course, and Lafayette has tremendous medical facilities. We have some fantastic physicians in Lafayette here practicing. The people of Lafayette are very fortunate to have these talented and brilliant doctors here. But yeah, I agree. I think that Lafayette has grown tremendously medically, and it has attracted a great deal of specialists to the area. And we can provide any medical services that any big city can provide, you know. And
companies like Dr. Kip Schumacher's company and what they do with emergency room management and the worldwide implications, and they are not a top 50 Acadiana company, they're a top 2, you know. They are
across the country.
Well, that's right, and they're a trendsetter. If you look at what Lafayette General has done under the leadership of David Callicott, who is just an absolute genius and an amazing visionary, who is taking our community hospital, because a lot of folks don't realize that LGMC is a community hospital, and it is taking that hospital to new heights with its robust clinic environment, its vision to be a true teaching hospital, its relationship with the state, its involvement with basically rescuing University Medical Center.
I'm about to make that point because, 2 years ago, that UMC became partnership with Lafayette General Medical Center.
And Front Page News, the acquisition of regional. And you look at those things, it serves up what we have been discussing for at least the past 4 years, and that it is Lafayette's time for a medical school. And there is
been in the news. I've heard a lot of people talking about it.
And look, and there is no doubt. I mean, maybe in years past, the politics of LSU and LSU New Orleans and LSU Shreveport and the political will of Baton Rouge just weren't going to allow it to happen. I think it is long overdue. It's something that I certainly support, have had played a part in meaningful meetings that have taken place quietly over the past 2 years in furtherance of a medical school. I think it will happen because the facilities are here. If we had to start up a medical school and find $100 million to be able to do that in state funds, of course that's not going to happen. But if there is a way to integrate, and there is, the existing medical facilities that we have and fold in teaching hospitals, you know that these young residents want to live in Lafayette, Louisiana.
Oh, everybody does.
That's right.
Sure.
And then the great news about that is, if we believe what you doctors tell us, that the resident generally ends up within 60 miles or so of where they live.
90%.
Well, then we're creating and recruiting young doctors and young families with higher incomes that live in our community, and perhaps we're able to solve this challenge that we face as it relates to rural health care, having enough docs who are willing to locate and staff rural parts of our community. That is an issue
because you make a very good point. Everybody wants to live in Lafayette,
right?
But there are great incentives for physicians to practice in these rural areas.
Absolutely.
There's educational loan forgiveness and various incentives. Their reimbursement schedule for Medicaid and Medicare, it's much higher, more than double for those individuals who practice in those rural areas. So there are incentives in place.
And then facing the mental health challenge. I mean, we can get, again, that's probably another half-hour show, but we're starting to see it in the areas of law enforcement, in the areas of public health, in the areas of and law enforcement, but also incarceration. There are some real challenges that we've seen because of that decentralization of mental health and the ability for us to have a facility or multiple facilities and a conduit to be able to address those in an area where it keeps our community safe. It takes into account the person who is afflicted as well. And it's a whole lot more expensive to deal with that on the backside as it relates to operating our prison. I made the comment that the chief mental health officer in Lafayette Parish for the past 4 years at least has been Sheriff Mike Newstrom, because he encounters that literally every day, and it is something that he sees every day at our local prison, because someone who is not getting the treatment they need, does not have the program that they need, offends because of that illness, and then ends up getting arrested, and then he or she ends up where Sheriff Newstrom has to deal with that situation. That's going to be one of the biggest challenges I think we're going to face as a community in the years ahead as we have to provide the services that are needed to that segment of our population.
That brings me to a question about something that we just experienced, unfortunately, 3 weeks ago, the shooting at the Grand Theater. And we talk about you talk about the mental health, and this is the underlying cause of these people. Now, there's the people with the guns, they want stiffer gun regulations, and it's the guns in the wrong hands. It's the guns in the hands of the mentally ill individuals. We rank 46 in the country for us providing care for mental health in Louisiana, unfortunately. Yes. And, more money needs to be spent in mental health. You make a very good point of Sheriff Newstrom, what he was striving to do, because he realized that the people are incarcerated because of a mental situation. Let's face it, these people aren't thinking logically. These are mental issues that have not been addressed by the mental health people. They've fallen through the cracks. Those things need to be tightened up so that we can provide better mental health care for these individuals. Absolutely. If we drop the ball, it comes back, in a nasty kind of way with a shooting. This individual, untreated and loose on society. I remember one of my professors saying that, in psychiatry rotation, is that these people are everywhere. These mental health issues, the individuals with these issues are out in society at large, and functioning and right aside, and you never know. And then an incident happens, and you go back and look in this person's past medical history, and they had a mental health issue that was overlooked. So,
And and for someone who has not committed a criminal act but has a mental health issue, incarceration in jail is not the right place for that person if they have not committed a crime. Certainly, someone who commits a crime, incarceration is a must. Right. And so, a hospital where someone, as we think of routine hospital care, that may be the right program, or they may be able to offer the right program, but that's not the right place. That's not the right facility. So being able to work with perhaps our parish health unit and Dr. Tina Stefanski, who is our regional director, we've had that conversation about mental health and mental health issues. And then the issues affecting our youth, mental health as well. We have a brand new school superintendent, Dr. Don Aguilar, and we met with Dr. Aguilar about working in a better environment, the AMI Kids environment that we used for getting troubled youth into the right program and short-circuiting those problems at an early age so they don't become much more expensive and potentially more dangerous problems as an adult later on. So I think the only way to do it is through collaboration. Lafayette Consolidated Government and government as a whole cannot solve those problems. The school board can't do it by itself with the needs that it has. The sheriff, either through proactive programs at the street level or reactive when someone has to be incarcerated, cannot do it by himself. The parish health unit, they can't do it by themselves, and the state of Louisiana can't do it by itself. But I think through a collaboration and through a significant conversation, we have to come to terms with that. We better come to terms with that, or it's going to continue to be a problem. We certainly don't want to see what the other larger cities have experienced in that regard.
Exactly. I want to ask you about the veterans. Medical attention, medical care for the veterans. They were talk about a veterans hospital taking over the old Our Lady of Lourdes facility, physical plant. And the veterans, we're going to get a possibility of the potential to get a veterans hospital here because the closest is, I think, Alexandria. Our veterans have to travel. Now, we do have a clinic for them, but we don't have an actual hospital where they can have procedures that they have to have done. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I should have brought my notes on that. Don't hold me to it, I may be not quite correct on the facts on this.
Is it still an open door possibility?
It is, but of course, being a federal program and being incredibly expensive to build a hospital, we just talked about that. When you look at the hospitals that have been funded nationally, as it relates to our veterans, those are in the single digits, and New Orleans got one of those. And Alexandria has a facility as well. So as a practical matter, I think it was a difficult sell to be able to get a fully operating brand new hospital for veterans based on the location of the others. If you look at veterans as a percentage of our population and as a part of service, the Acadiana area and Lafayette has a large percentage of those who dedicate themselves to that type of service, military service.
I see, yeah.
And I think the government has a responsibility to provide help to those in return and to tell them that they shouldn't have to drive to Alexandria. They shouldn't have to drive to New Orleans. Right. They shouldn't have to wait 4 months for a routine surgical procedure. I was a part of the initial conversations as it related potentially to an acquisition or a redevelopment of Lourdes Hospital. But think about that. If it made sense for Lourdes to stay there, they would have stayed there. There was some issues unique to that physical plant and you would know being in the industry, over how it was reconstructed and added on and renovated and those things that made it very, very inefficient. The parking towers are still very functional, right. But the hospital building proper, what we heard from the experts there, is that to renovate that and put that in an environment to where it could have been a veterans hospital for our local veterans would have been extraordinarily expensive and maybe money that would not have been well spent. I don't mean to sound like I certainly would not, that I'm not supporting what would be a full-blown, fully operational veterans hospital in our area. It certainly makes sense. But the federal government and others have chosen to go into a different direction for now. And so what we have to do is make sure that the new facility, the one that's going to be constructed off of Ambassador Caffrey, is done correctly. I've talked to many veterans who are just not happy with the location, who have told us, what were they thinking when they chose this location? Well, I didn't get to choose, you didn't get to choose, right. But if that's where it's going to be, we need to continue to have the dialogue and the discussion to make sure that when it's built and when it's there, that we have adequate transportation to get our veterans in and out, and that the facility is adequate enough, more than adequate, to be able to take care of the veterans in a manner that they have long deserved to be taken care of.
You know, Lafayette Parish has many accolades. I want to talk about some of these. We're best food in the food city in America, tastiest city in the South, tastiest town, Southern Living Magazine, Festival International named Best Musical Festival, lowest unemployment rate in Louisiana, 16th lowest unemployment rate in the U.S., fastest growing economy in the country, 6th fastest growing middle class in the U.S., largest employment increase in the U.S. You know, Forbes has come out about Lafayette, best job market in the country, fastest growing metropolitan area, #1 mid-sized city in the country for job growth, 4th among all cities of any size. And a Harvard study said the happiest people in America, which is a great.
I think you gave part of the reasons why before you put the headline last. That's why.
Yeah, you know, you can't come to, you know, you mentioned about the residents coming to Lafayette and training, and I've seen many of them within the family practice and internal medicine program stay in Lafayette. Look, that's what it was for me. I came to UL, you know, in the 70s and fell in love with Lafayette. Of course, I wasn't leaving Red Lavrel's, except to build my own health club back in Morgan City there, and then but came back to Lafayette because this is home. Born in Morgan City, but I look at Lafayette as home because of the friendly people. I've been here so long, I have so many friends here. But it's a very warm city, very open and receptive city to new people coming to the area, and I think people, you know, you're not going to find better people than the people here in Lafayette, Louisiana, anywhere in the country, I think, you know, and other people have told me that's how they feel too.
I have a campaign ad out right now, a television commercial, and it begins by saying that when a community makes a best of list, it's not the place, it's the people. And there is nowhere on earth that is more true than where we are here. And many of the folks who have made us that best of could live anywhere in the world. They have an ability to be able to do that based on the nature of their profession or what they do, where they're running their companies. Certainly a lot of the oil and gas people could be living in Texas or living elsewhere, and they may have a lot of business there and actually have physical properties there, but they live here, and because that's where they want to live. I don't think that happens by accident. Let me brag about my boss, about Joey Durrell, for a while.
Sure.
That was his vision. He made a only halfway joking comment back in 2004 and 2005 that said, when I'm finished, I want to read about the mayor of Austin, Texas saying, we've done it. We are the Lafayette, Louisiana of Texas. And Joey was only halfway joking about that. And now here we are about 12 years later, and on some of those lists, we outpace Austin. Austin is in the top 5, and we are ahead of them in that regard. And Austin, for a number of years, has been widely regarded as a community that get things right, and it has, you know, reinvented that community in their downtown area to do the kind of things that other communities would be proud of. But you don't make a best of list by accident. Those things don't happen by accident. And I think that our community's decision to elect Joey Durrell, his decision to embark on this very ambitious program and to assemble the team to get it done, and our relationship with the business community and with the minority community and the urban core and other places, I think has served us very, very well in making those best of lists. My comment is, let's make the best of even better.
Yeah, I saw that comment that Joey Durrell made in one of his speeches, and I thought that, we were first in Austin. I think they were 5th on that list.
Yes.
They were named 5th.
Right.
Joey Durrell says of you that, you know, you have a tremendous work ethics. You're the Energizer Bunny, and he doesn't know anyone who returns calls. And you just told me in 2 days you had 250 calls. And
I'm not as good at it as I used to be, Doc. I have to admit that to the viewing public. I now have more calls than I have minutes in a day. That's a good problem to have because I care about outreach. But I've prided myself in same-day service, you know, usually within a half day to try to get those calls returned. If you're one of those out there watching and I have not returned your call, it's not on purpose. I promise you. It's a question of minutes and demand.
and getting your emails responded.
Yes. I was supposed to send you some of the discussion items and topics for this last night.
Yeah.
You didn't get it until this morning.
Yeah,
So.
well, I understand you've got a few things extra going on now that you didn't have a year ago.
Yes.
But that's understandable. Okay, I want to talk about the achievements that has taken place in the last 8 years.
Okay.
With your work with Joey Durrell. Of course, you carry out all these directives. You know, you're the leg man for the parish president, more or less, and you work with every department, you know, overseeing everything and troubleshooting, and I'm sure you get a lot of emails and telephone calls in the course of it, but there's several achievements that have taken place. Building of 2 natural gas fired power plants without raising taxes.
Let me put you on pause and discuss that one very briefly,
Sure.
just for 30 seconds,
Sure.
because it's not something that people would pay attention to. It doesn't have that broad-based appeal of a horse farm project or fiber optics. But what was important about those 2 small plants, and those are $50 million plants, and it is that when the demand comes for power and our businesses and our citizens turn their lights on and their air conditioning goes on, it better work. And they don't worry about how it works, and they shouldn't. But in 2004, we recognized at some point that the demand was going to exceed our capacity to be able to meet that demand. What happened back then was we got with Terry Huval, got with the engineering community, and we designed some very efficient plants for their day. GE jet turbine engines, basically, that can ramp up in 20 minutes. Unmanned plants, so you don't have this expense of a large number of employees that are not working. So the plant runs when the plant needs to run. In 2009, we would have hit that threshold of not being able to produce enough power for us to be able to generate it. And there would have been potentially brownouts or even blackouts in our community for the first time in history. And our people, you want to see a best of list evaporate? That type of thing happens where there's no confidence in your utility and there's no confidence to be able to meet the very basic demands of what your community needs. And we recognized that early on, and we went after that project literally weeks into the 2004 year and got those plants eventually built. People say, well, why don't you just purchase power? Well, we're doing that today. And back in the day, Lafayette used to be a surplus power generator, and we would sell power. Other communities would purchase power from us. Our demand does not, and our growth does not allow us to do that today. So while it's fine to say, why don't you just purchase power? You have to get that power here. And the transmission grid in this country, you've seen national news about that. You know, within the last 10 years, we've had catastrophic blackouts in the Northeast because of issues related to the grid and the fact that it does not have the integrity that it once did. And by grid, I mean the power lines that actually it's like a big traffic cop trying to get power that's generated somewhere else. But we are involved with an organization now called MISO, where we participate in generating power. And MISO participates in generating power, and then it distributes the power where it's needed on demand. So that's helped us, and it is a very sophisticated model. Decisions are made hourly, every day, as it relates to the MISO model on what power goes where and who generates what. So it's a lot more efficient in being able to get the power that you need, but you don't have all of your marbles in one basket. Lafayette is still able to generate its own power and to be able to take care of its own need, and I think that's very significant.
There was the Lafayette Utilities Fiber Initiative, which we know now is very successful, and it was one of George Durrell's big issues when he came into office to establish that, and we've successfully there now. You know,
those were some great meetings.
And it was a big accomplishment because it was quite an undertaking.
I don't know if we've ever discussed this publicly before. Those early meetings were great. And I have to tell you that Mayor Durrell had struggled with that decision for government providing a service, at least as it related to television and telephone. The internet service was not being provided where we needed it. When you had great companies like Cox and AT&T already providing that service. So you don't take as an elected official, you don't take competing against two companies like that employ a lot of people, that make major investments in the communities where they live and employ those people, and you don't take that lightly. So the first thing Mayor Durrell did was he called the leaders of those companies together and organized a meeting and laid out what he wanted to do. And what we heard from them at that time was that Lafayette was not a tier 1 community. That if they were going to spend the kind of money that needed to be spent to provide that service, it would be in a much larger city. And they named several cities as examples. And in fact, in Louisiana, we would have been considered a tier 2 city. It would make sense, I would think, that New Orleans, because of population and the rebuild after Katrina, and Baton Rouge is the capital of state government, and Shreveport, because of its size and the population and the architects, would be places where they would look at making that investment. But Joey Durrell told those officials, those company corporate folks, that he said, I'm not the mayor of any of those cities. And we believe that there's going to be a hunger for bandwidth over the next decade that we better be in a position to be able to meet. And you guys are equipped to be able to do it. And they decided not to do it. And, you know, they said, we're going to challenge you legally. And they did that. And then there was an election, and the people overwhelmingly voted for it. Then they challenged us legally again, and it went all the way to the Louisiana Supreme Court. The Louisiana Supreme Court, by a vote of 7-0, a unanimous vote, gave the go-ahead for us to be able to proceed with that project 3 years later. And now fiber now is cash flow positive and has, you know, tens of thousands of customers, is providing the fastest internet speeds in North America, some of the fastest in the world. And there are communities that 20 years from now won't be able to do what we're doing. So when you look at the companies that we've previously mentioned, and I know because I've spoken to the CEOs of those companies, and ask them why they're here. The state incentives are significant. That's important as it relates to either tax breaks or a public-private partnership. That's why they're in Louisiana.
Right.
That's not why they're in Lafayette. They could be in any of the other cities we just mentioned. The reason they're in Lafayette, there are three, basically. The university, but there are universities in other cities. Fiber optics and the fastest internet speed, which exists nowhere else in Louisiana. And our people, that wildcatter, entrepreneurial spirit, our work ethic, our workforce. And I heard that from the CEOs of those companies. That discussion doesn't happen without fiber optics.
I was going to say that does attract a lot of people, industry to Lafayette that normally wouldn't come here because we have this fiber optics in place.
Right.
And it's afforded us so much growth in that area and will continue in the future. I want to talk about the road extensions, extending Louisiana Avenue, Pointe Mouton Road, Settlers Trace, widening of College Saloon. These are some of the things that were accomplished over the past 8 years. And then the plan for a new airport terminal.
Widening of College Saloon is still under construction. It's going to be some time before that happens. We need to build more roads, wider roads, longer roads, got to build them as fast as we can build them. And the challenge is to do it without tax increases. People have said pretty seriously that they don't want to see any games with taxes. They don't want to see any property taxes put on top of the burden that they already have to pay in supporting their families. The airport model offers up a very interesting model to be able to do some very creative things. And many of the people, and we still hear it, they do not believe that tax is going to go away. And a lot of that is because of the lack of confidence that they have in state government. I had a friend say, we're still waiting on the lottery money. Wasn't the lottery money supposed to save higher education? Where's all that money going? Sure. But there is a challenge to be able to meet the demand that people want. So do you toll roads? Well, a toll is just a fancy word for a tax, right? It's something. Yeah. It's something that I have to pay. But people also say, why does Texas have the type of roads they have? They have tolls on many of those roads.
Correct, they do.
You either need to get federal money, you either need to raise local money and incur debt to be able to do it, you need to toll it. The important thing, I think, is to explain and to communicate to the public and to understand their demand and what they want and what they're willing to pay for that demand. They told us in 2006, when we put a proposition up for a sales tax with a taxing district, to do $600 million in roads between 2006 and 2016, which is next year. And that tax failed. The voters spoke in resounding fashion that we don't want any additional taxes. Do what you got to do with the money that you have. So that's what we've been doing. So a lot of the accomplishments, all of the accomplishments that have been happening without an increase in taxes and within the existing framework. We're doing it. We're just not doing it, I think, fast enough. Fast forward to the airport. We looked potentially at using that model, and what I mean is a tax that goes away after a certain period of time. And for the airport, we're about 90 days away from that. And I assure the public that tax will go away legally. It sunsets. It drops off the table. That gives you an opportunity to do something else. Well, I understand the challenges. Then the public will say, well, wait a minute. The tax goes away for the airport, but then it comes back to build what? The beauty of that scenario is you get to decide. The public gets to decide, not me, not our council, not anyone else. And that is, if you want to build $60 million in roads, major projects, 2 new bridges across the river potentially, you can do it for one tax, 1 year, and then that tax goes away. So then, yeah, you will have had a tax for a year and 8 months, but that's better than the government saying we're going to put a tax in that never goes away and we're going to incur debt that's going to take us 25 years to pay off. Because remember, you'd be paying cash for those projects. You would not be incurring any additional debt. So I look forward to having the conversation with our community to determine what it wants, what it's willing to do, to stay away from the things that are a waste of time, that are not going to pass, that don't make any sense, but to engage in real serious conversations about building out this community. One of the best demographers in our state expects the state to grow, the parish to grow 90,000 people between now and 2035. Where are we going to put them? Not only where are they going to live, where really? Urban core is an answer, bringing people back to the urban core in the downtown area. We're already hearing from people who want to live back downtown. The new companies that are coming to town, a lot of those younger people have indicated they would love to live in the downtown area. And then again, what I said to start this conversation, wider roads, longer roads, better roads, and more roads. That has to be the answer.
I agree. You said you wanted a world-class performing arts center. Mm-hmm. And can you elaborate on that?
Sure, I think we deserve it. But there are a lot, as we just talked about, the medical school is a priority, improving roads and drainage is a priority, taking care of law enforcement is a priority. There are a lot of number one priorities. And getting our arms around what would be a $75 or $80 million building, more than the cost of the Cajun Dome was when it was built 30 years ago. It's kind of hard to get your arms around that, to get your mind around doing that when you have all of the other needs that we have, and then where is the money going to come from to operate it? There are several models that are out there. Government cannot afford to do it, and I do not believe the community is going to give the permission for us to do it by ourselves. The private sector needs to play a role in that, but the private sector couldn't and shouldn't be willing to do it all themselves to run this type of facility. And then the state, potentially. The state has contributed capital outlay money to performing arts centers in other communities. And they contributed the money that built the current Acadiana Center for the Arts. So there are several, and then there's our university as a player. If you look in Columbus, Columbus used their Performing Arts Center in partnership and collaboration with their university to revitalize their downtown. It was paid, I'm rounding numbers here, but it was paid roughly 1/3 by the state, 1/3 by the local government, 1/3 by a benefactor. Again, that's the type of discussion to have. That is not the type of facility where a decision will be made, money will be raised, and the facility will be built, potentially within the next 5 to 10 years, but we at least ought to have the conversation. If we're going to be a city and parish of 350,000 at some point, we have to have the type of entertainment facilities and the things that people demand so we can continue that best of list.
Correct. My director has given me the signal to need to wrap it up. We're coming short on time here.
Yes, sir.
So your vision for Lafayette, if you could kind of capsulize that for me over the next 8 years.
Well, I'll start with my comment of let's make the best of even better. If you like where we've been, I think you're going to love where we're going. I don't take complete credit for the things that we've done in the past 12 years, and I shouldn't. What I have been is part of an amazing team that Mayor Durrell has put together. I am proud to be one of the leaders of that team. I am a pro-business person and a pro-business candidate. I don't believe in additional taxes. I believe in additional taxpayers. The more you're able to develop your community and to do it with a comprehensive plan, to unify our development code, to protect the urban core, to reduce sprawl where we can, and to allow the private sector to be able to function not in spite of government and not because of government, but with government as a partner. Those are the things that I believe in. The more we can do that, and we've done it in the past 12 years, we keep unemployment low, we keep the workforce demand high, we have well-paying jobs, those people move into a community that they love, they stay, they spend their money here, that helps those businesses thrive, but it also helps to support government services. So it's about balance.
Correct. Steve, I want to thank you very much for taking your valuable time.
Thanks, Doc, and thank you for watching.
And coming on my program today and going over these points. We've been talking to Dee Stanley, the Chief Administrative Officer for the past 8 years here in Lafayette, who is currently a candidate in the parish president race at this time. I'm Dr. Rick Duplantis. I hope you've enjoyed this program and the insight that was shared with you. I hope you tune in next week to our program, It's Your Health. Hope you have a very pleasant evening. God bless you.